We'll leave Gerald over there where he belongs right now, because we are being joined by Antonio and Mike. It's Mike, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I was like, dude, don't screw up names, Nick. Of the Cultworthy Podcast, Cultworthy Studios. Gentlemen, welcome. What did I refer to you on social media as, Antonio?
Something about like a endless pit of movie knowledge or an encyclopedia, whatever it was. I was very flattered by it.
You're both incredible. I'm going to move you guys into solo view, just so that way we can see both of your beautiful faces, and everybody's tired of looking at me by now. So before you guys get started, because you guys always have some really, really fun stuff planned for us, let the audience know about Cultworthy Studios, Cultworthy Podcast, and what you guys are going to do today.
Awesome. So everyone, I'm Antonio Palacios, host of the Cultworthy Cinema Podcast, creator of Cultworthy Studios, which has other podcasts involved, that being the MILF and Me podcast, which is a romantic relationship podcast, and then my new show called Back to the Balcony, which is a Siskel and Ebert retrospective show where my co-host Justin Henson and I talk about movies that Siskel and Ebert reviewed, and then we critique the critiques. So those are all of the shows under the Cultworthy Cinema Podcast.
Nice.
And today, I'm here with my good friend Mike Jones, frequent collaborator and contributor, and this is our third year doing Livestream for The Cure, so we're really excited, and thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here.
And just a reminder for people who've seen us before, or if they're tuning in for the first time, my boy Mike here is a 7-year cancer survivor, so this really means a lot to us, and it's always exciting to get him on here and talk about his journey.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Mike, how about you tell the audience about that?
Well, I got diagnosed in May of 2017 with testicular cancer. I lucked out because, in my case, I was able to catch it at stage 1A, and it's a really good thing that I did. Because my tumor was inside, not on the outside. That's how you normally detect it. And that's a little bit rarer. I had non-seminoma, which is a slower moving cancer, but it was also kind of scary because what I was told was that with the slower moving cancer, it would have spread more slowly, but I would have not noticed anything was going on because your body acclimates to the slower changes. So my oncologist said most of the guys that have it the way I did don't find out for 5 years or so that they have cancer, and then they're basically being told to get their affairs in order. So feel really lucky and really blessed that I caught it when I did. So the message here is just check your balls.
Yeah, check your balls.
Play with yourself.
I mean,
do it.
This being one of my best friends and seeing him all the time, the second I found out about his condition, I started checking my balls like on the reg, and not just like the pleasureful check. It's like, let's get in there. Let's look for things. Let's feel around. Let's dig in.
I mean, all joking aside, I mean, it can be a funny way to go about it, but I mean, just know what's normal for your body. And when you notice something, it isn't normal. See, I caught it because, typically you don't have pain with this. And I really didn't have any pain. It kind of felt like, in high school, like guys are watching funeral hall and just like, they kind of like whack you, slap you.
Squirrel tap.
Yeah, that's almost how it felt. It wasn't anything bad, but I was having lower back pain. I could barely stand up.
Yeah.
And that's what got me to the doctor. My doctor felt kind of weird. So he ended up ordering an ultrasound because he thought that it was epididymitis, if I said that right. And I don't love taking medication if I don't have to. I kind of shy away from that. So he's like, well, let's just make sure it's something before we put you on anything. And that's how they detected it. Otherwise, I probably would have gone 5-6 years without knowing I had anything. So
what I don't get, Nick, is the fact that, he's 7 years, almost free and clear, getting checked, but he insists that I inspect him regularly. And I mean,
does this look normal? Fun fact, I'm not wearing any pants right now, just so Antonio can always take a peek over and go, that doesn't look normal.
I'm like, I'm not a doctor, but he says I have soft, delicate fingers. So, I mean, that's
yeah, kind of funny story. After the fact, after everything was said and done, I went to for a checkup, and my doctor, the oncologist, is checking me out, and he's like, everything looks real good. Everything looks great. Everything looks really good. And I said, well, thank you. I've been told I have the scrotum of a much younger man. And my doctor, he's like sitting there, mind you, his hands are like still on my ball. And he's like looking at me and it's just like what, Mike? An infant? And I was like, oh.
Doctor's got jokes.
Yes.
Anyway, that's our cancer stuff. We got donations, Nick. That's awesome.
Yeah, my alerts have been going haywire all weekend. So we got one donation from the amazing ladies that were just on last segment. Two Girls on a Bench, Trisha and Sean, a $150 donation. Woo! Thank you so much, ladies. And I love you too. You're so amazing.
Two ladies.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, let's get into movie stuff. So before we get into like our conversation, we've got some perks for people that want to donate during our segment. I love the donations, but let's go ahead and tell you what we got.
Yes.
Okay, so we are going to be putting some of our special items here up for donation, and we're going to have different tiers for it. So please listen to the donation tiers, and this is the cool stuff you get. This is for all the crazy movie collectors out there or people who just want to help and want like a little weird piece of nostalgia. So number one, on the $25 tier for donations, this is a film called Clarence. This is a sequel to It's a Wonderful Life that not many people know exists.
Wow.
Yeah. Robert Carradine plays Clarence the Angel, who helps Jimmy Stewart in It's a Wonderful Life. This is made in 1991, straight to video. And it's his journey after getting his wings and having to get them back when he fails to do a specific task. No one's seen this movie. I found it very, very luckily at a pawn shop, and it is a trip. So if you want some interesting VHS memorabilia on your collection, Clarence, the sequel to It's a Wonderful Life, the $25 donation tier.
Well,
and how these donations work is get on the Cultworthy Studios on Instagram, DM me with a picture of your donation receipt, and I will mail these out on Monday to the people who've donated. So again, $25 tier. Think of this as the Furiosa of It's a Wonderful Life. It's just like a prequel / sequel.
Clarence, he got a facelift too as a reward for helping.
Yeah, he got a lot younger.
Yeah, he got a facelift. He got everything.
I mean, speaking of, it's funny you mentioned Furiosa because that donation came from someone who you joined recently to talk about Furiosa, Josh Scar from Talking Smack, to a $25 donation. So Clarence is already gone. And then Kristen and Phoebe coming in with another $25 donation right after them.
You know them. They're awesome.
They know them.
Thank you.
They don't get a movie because they have access to all my movies in this room.
They have access to all my movies too.
We love you guys.
Love you.
All right. The next $25 tier is the VHS copy of Band of the Hand, directed by Paul Michael Glazer, co-written and produced by Michael Mann. It's essentially Miami Vice for teens. Story is a bunch of juvenile delinquents in Miami get sent to the Everglades to learn how to be survivalists by Stephen Lang, who was, the bad guy in the Avatar movies, and he plays a Native American tracker.
This movie is going to get canceled.
But once they get trained and they learn how to coexist and fight crime together, they're moved into the projects of Miami to battle drug dealers played by Lawrence Fishburne and James Remar, while driving Ferraris and wearing Miami Vice clothes. So I've got the Blu-ray, and I'm willing to let go of my 40-year-old VHS for the $25 tier. So the next tier that gets that, 1986.
1986, wow.
It's amazing.
Rare on VHS, great for collections.
Oh, yeah.
All right, now, the $30 tier. We've got a factory-sealed copy of Scream Factory's Idle Hands, starring Devin Sawa and Seth Green and Jessica Alba, like in one of her first movies.
Quite the find.
Everyone loves this movie. Factory sealed. Everyone collects Scream Factory. So $30 tier. If you want this, you know what to do. Okay, we're moving up now to the $40 tier. For the $40 donations, we've got a sealed factory 4K and Blu-ray of Louis Teague's and John Sayles' Alligator, starring Robert Forster and Michael Gazzo.
Great movie. My
friends Dissect That Film, who were just on a couple of segments before us, they just covered this last week. It's one of the best horror movies of the 80s, highly underrated. So if you want this factory sealed collector's edition, that's on the $40 tier.
So I'm going to just say, I remember around November-ish, I get a text from Antonio, and he's like, tell me about movies you bought recently. And I was like, I don't know about this and this. And he's like, do you have a movie called Alligator? And I'm like, yeah. And he just like a second later, I get, God damn it, Mikey.
Because I always try and buy 2 of something in case I want to either flip it or sell one or give one away. And I saved it for Livestream. Okay, so now for the $50 tier. This is the real rarity.
Here comes the money. Here comes the money.
Was that one of the tiers that we just talked about?
Well,
Nick?
that was indeed a $30 donation for idle hands from the one, the only Destruction in Human Form, Jared Taylor. Love you, Jared.
Heck yeah, Jared.
Awesome, Jared. So follow me on the Cultworthy Studios. Send me a DM with that, and we will get that to you once I get your information. $50 tier. This is the real collector's item, everybody. This is Cirio H. Santiago's famous schlock grindhouse Filipino director. Nam's Angels, factory sealed, wrapped. It is from Code Red. It's long out of print. It sells between $30 and $50 online, new and used. I'm putting it at the $50 tier. I could go higher, but I want to get donations. I just don't want to sit on it.
Yeah.
So it is a crazy Vietnam action revenge movie starring Vernon Wells from The Road Warrior. It also stars Brad Johnson, and it's essentially like a biker Nam revenge flick that's out of control. Like I said, collector's item, super rare, factory sealed, $50 tier.
I remember how excited you were when you found that.
Well, I got 2 of them. That's why I'm donating one. So anyway, those are the things that we are putting up for donation, and we are excited to see that money rolling in. And we can't thank you guys enough.
Yeah, thank you.
Keep it coming.
So how much for the framed print there of the professional that's sitting right there on the table?
I'd be willing to let that go for $100, but I did not pay that much for it. It's a piece of the studio, but I could part with it for $100. Anyway, so here we go into our conversation. So Mikey is my most frequent guest in the 3 years of the podcast. I've had him on more times, and we've covered more films than any other guest I've had. And that's on the Cultworthy Podcast and the Cultworthy Classic, which has been since retired, which we did classic films made before 1970. And so what we decided to do is we have a list of all the movies that we covered. We're going to go through them one by one and see how much we remember of these films, because a few of them I've seen since we watched them and reviewed them.
Yeah.
And the others I was just like, oh, no, I think I got that out of my system. We're going to see how much we remember and how we suggest them to other people.
Yeah, I mean, as much as we all love movies, let's face it, some movies you only need to watch once.
This is true. And also, we're collectors. We tend to only want to collect what we know we're going to watch. Like, we just don't blind buy unless it's a really good deal.
Yeah.
But also, I'm almost at 6,000 movies logged on Letterboxd.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah, it's insane. So
it's hard to pick through some of the ones that we've seen. The first year that we were on here, the game that we played was all the ones that I had reviewed on Letterboxd and how much I could remember of the plot and the year and the director. We're going to kind of do this right now, but we're not going to do the game. We're just going to do a conversation.
Yes.
All right. So Mikey, one of the first movies that we covered was a rarity that's grown in popularity since.
Yeah.
And that was Who Killed Teddy Bear? Directed by Joseph Cates, stars Sal Mineo and Juliet Prowse. So this is a film that came out right on the heels of Psycho, and it's kind of a guerrilla style New York suspense film.
Yeah.
Really groundbreaking because it really kind of put on the forefront the bisexuality of Sal Mineo and also the sexual underbelly of Greenwich Village, New York City.
Oh, yeah.
The disco scene before it became really big. And you weren't seeing a lot of movies like that on the big screen back then. They were really reserved for drive-in theaters and grindhouse theaters and maybe 42nd Street.
Right. And this was 1962. So yeah, this is early on. And I remember we talked about kind of the breakdown of the studio system and how that impacted this film and allowing for this type of content to be released in a movie that was from a major studio, a major release. It was reviewed by Ebert, right?
Yeah.
And he was disgusted by it. He said it was a waste of good talent. And for the history buffs out there, I think you'll all remember, like, there, we had antitrust litigation happening in Hollywood, or that had happened in Hollywood, and the breakdown of the studio system, the realization from studios that they needed to make more content that isn't something people could see on TV.
And to get people into the theaters, because as the Hays Code started to kind of dissolve and censorship wasn't as much concerning anymore, this is right before the new Hollywood movement where we started seeing a lot more adult content. And so Sal Mineo, who was already kind of like in the limelight for his bisexuality and, the sexual undertones of Rebel Without a Cause.
When he'd been nominated for many awards.
Absolutely. This film is really interesting because it's kind of like a proto version of like the telephone stalker movie. So like when a stranger calls, or Black Christmas, things where like someone calls and breathes on the phone, there is a mysterious voice that calls our main character Juliet Prowse in the middle of the night and says that he can see her and he wants to see her touch herself, and is very kind of like sexually aggressive, but in a very menacing way, not a violent way. So this puts her on edge. And at the same time, she is working at this nightclub where she befriends a cloak boy, like the coat check guy, played by Sal Mineo. Now, spoilers, we know right from the very beginning who the stalker is. So the best part of the movie is us seeing the journey of her realization of who's actually stalking her, even after she's created a friendship with him. We have seen this trope portrayed in like every 90s erotic thriller. We still see it today. We've seen lots of these movies where it's like the sexy bad guy, you're going to fall in love with him, but he's the bad guy. This is a super early example of that, and it's very, very, very well done.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think some of the things that just stick out to me the most is, and you really, I think, have to view these vintage films, I'll call them, through the lens of like back in the time. Because if you're looking at it now, you're just like, nah, that's nothing.
It kind of seems tame.
Yeah. And so, but if you view it knowing, hey, this is the first time they did this, this was radical for its day. I mean, if you watch, what is can't believe I'm forgetting the first X-rated movie nominated for an Academy Award.
Midnight Cowboy.
I was going to say Drugstore Cowboy, but that's wrong.
Wrong cowboy, Mikey.
The wrong cowboy. Never thought I'd say those words. But you really like you look at that one and you're like, that was rated X, and by today's standards, like you'd see that on TV now.
It's practically PG-13.
PG-13. And so it's interesting to note how standards change over time. But if you look at it with that in mind, then I think you can kind of travel back in time a little bit and experience some of the shock and awe. And that is what made these movies so interesting to watch in their day. Because, some of them don't have the strongest plot line, or it's just a simple story, really well done. But when you take into account the shock factor that these movies had on their release, that was part of the excitement and the thrill of them. I mean, we see that today now. Like, look at is it
A24 is doing all that kind of stuff like that, and that
really
kind of
explicit stuff in movies. You're like, does this always work?
It goes to show also a point that we make. I think we've made it every single year, is the fact that as movies get more and more expensive to make for no reason, returns are less and less, and they're like, oh, that's going to be the end of Hollywood. It's going to be the end of theaters. It's like, we need this back in the world where we can have low budget, medium budget content being able to just go into movie theaters and get a return to keep theaters in business. But instead they push this onto streaming, which I mean, everyone loves streaming, but it's not going to save the movie business. It's not going to save the theaters,
No, I mean, and this is the same battle that we started seeing in the 1950s,
with TV.
With TV, because they were saying, hey, no one's going to go see a movie if they can get entertainment at home. So movies had to be bigger. They had to be better. They had to have more content. Cinerama, deluxe color,
3D,
yeah. CinemaScope. What was that ultra wide one that they had? Cinerama. Cinerama. And, bigger and better and stuff you couldn't see at home. And we're seeing that now. And this time it's going, okay, well, we're just going to create uber comfortable theaters.
Yeah.
You know, back in the day, say, hey, we have air conditioning in this theater, and that was a big deal.
Right.
I think you guys know. I think you guys know this donor here, Parker. Dissect that film, $50, and all the comment says is alligator chomp chomp.
Say no more, Parker.
Say no more.
Say no more.
All right. Next one on the list is Double Door, which we absolutely fell in love with. It was a first time watch for me. You got it off of Kino Lorber, right?
Yeah, I got Amazon. It was basically my brother wanted to get me something for my birthday, and he said, pick something. And I just was like, this looks neat. So I grabbed it. So thank you, Matt.
So we've said this before. I think we said it last year. This is one of the most underrated and underseen early pre-code thrillers that I think is just absolutely required watching for people who are into cinema. Essentially, what they were trying to do is they were trying to create a Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi type icon, but for a female. And that's where Mary Morris, who plays the evil matriarch of this family, really comes into play. And it's the only movie that she ever made.
Yeah. She was a wonderful stage actress. She played the role on, when it was touring, was it a Broadway show?
It was a Broadway show.
So while it was on Broadway, she played the role for years and was able to fine tune it. And I remember seeing some of the advertisements that Universal came out with at the time. Or it was Paramount or Universal?
It was Paramount.
It was Paramount. That's right. I'm sorry. I got mixed up because they were pushing it.
They were competing with Universal's monsters.
Yeah, and they were saying that she was the most terrifying thing to hit the screen, and bragging that there was use of virtually no makeup, no prosthetics, no nothing, and that she made Frankenstein, Dracula look like sissies.
Yeah. So essentially, the story for this one is it's kind of like a Flowers in the Attic type thing, where you have like this really wealthy family who lives in a brownstone, almost like a mansion in New York City. They own all the property. And the matriarch, played by Mary Morris, she has a sister who is a shut-in. She keeps her shut-in. She doesn't let her out into the public.
Old spinster type.
And then she has a younger brother from another marriage, a different mother than she does. And essentially, he is getting all of the wealth and inheritance, and he's marrying this outsider of a woman.
She's a nurse.
And this really upsets the matriarch. So her plan is to lock this woman up in a safe that's got a double door and no one will ever find her. So very Edgar Allan Poe-ish.
Yeah, and she starts out just objecting to it. She tries various tricks in the film to
get her to leave.
Make her brother believe that she's having an affair. Because and it's just something so simple. Like it takes place in the early 1800s, early 1900s.
Right.
So it's a period piece for its day, and they are essentially slumlords.
That's really what they are.
They're really slumlords.
They are. They have taken all the properties that they've built up over the years, and they are not repairing them, and they're raising rents. Very people under the stairs, except not as much bondage.
Yeah, and so the oldest sister is just, she has complete control of the family.
Yeah,
and she does not have control of her younger brother like she does her sister. And her sister's reminiscing on the wedding day about, a man that she loved who, her sister drove away. And just, you get the idea that she's just fragile and just living with regret. And so she allows her sister to control her, but she can't control her brother so much. He's married this woman that she doesn't approve of. And I mean, you get the idea. She would not approve of him marrying anybody.
She wants the power, wants the control.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there's like an Oedipus thing there, because like it's a brother and sister, but it's just the control, and that she's the daddy now. That's what it essentially
right.
is.
And there's a scene where he recalls after their father died and he was lying in state in the parlor, how she took him down, and he was just a little boy, and made him put his hand in his father's dead hand. Yeah. And it's interesting because it's one of the earliest uses of the flashback technique that we've seen,
where like it's like a crossfade into a glimmering, shimmering haze over the flashback. Yeah.
And him voicing over it. And it's just this, it's a powerful scene in the movie because it's like the first time like him and his wife really connect on this past trauma that he suffered at the hands of his sister.
So this is a great movie. You can find it on YouTube in an okay quality, but the Kino Lorber Blu-ray really is like the best way to watch it.
It is.
Definitely check that out.
The standout version. But yeah, it's a great movie. I remember just having anxiety watching it and being so excited to share it with you because I knew that you were going to be like, how come we haven't seen this? And it's one that just fell through the cracks. There were like bundles of movies purchased by another studio, and
it would play road show festivals every once in a while, but nothing huge, and it's still
pop up in like some feminist film festivals every now and then.
Let's see. Okay. We covered this one for Pride Month last year. So June. It's been a year since we covered it.
Yeah.
And that is 1976's The Ritz.
Treat Williams. And we did this like a month before he passed away.
We did it right before he passed away. So absolutely.
Kind of our preemptive memorial episode for him. God rest him.
Indeed. So 1976, this was directed by Richard Lester of Superman 2, not the Richard Donner cut, and Superman 3. As well as Hard Day's Night and Help the Beatles movies.
Yeah.
And it stars Treat Williams, but mostly it's known for starring Jack Weston and a very, very young Jerry Stiller and a very, very young, what's his name? I forget.
Yeah.
So F. Murray Abraham.
I was going to say they have to watch it to find out.
F. Murray Abraham.
You ruined it.
So what this story is, it's one of those slapstick comedies that kind of harkens back to the days of like Howard Hawks and Preston Sturges, but it's done in a gay bathhouse in New York City, where Jack Weston's character, he is the brother-in-law of like a mob boss, essentially. And after the father of this mob family dies, he has every intention of killing Jack Weston because he doesn't like the fact that he married his sister. So Jack Weston hides out in a hotel because he asked the cab driver, take me where no one will ever look for me. And the cab driver takes him to a gay bathhouse in New York City. And it's so funny because like the outside of this building is just like a decrepit old building in New York.
Inconspicuous.
But once you go inside it, it's like the Wizard of Oz. It's like you've gone to Emerald City for gay people. It is just pools and showers and multiple levels of rooms and buffets. And there's just a whole bunch of colorful characters. And Rita Moreno plays Googie Gomez.
Gets mistaken for a drag queen.
She gets mistaken for a drag queen, even though she's like there as the talent. Everyone thinks that she's a drag queen. It's a very, very, very funny movie.
It is.
It's irreverent. It's definitely not PC for the modern time.
Definitely not.
But I remember after we put that episode out, a lot of my friends who do a lot of like queer cinema podcasts, they were reaching out. They're like, I am so glad you covered that movie because no one ever talks about it because they're afraid to, because it does have a lot of stereotypes. But that's one of the things that we found interesting is like, yeah, the stereotypes are painful now, but they can be looked at as a way that like that was just joking back then for them.
Right.
And yeah, we both agreed that it might have been better served if it had been directed by queer cinema icons, because it was written by a queer Broadway stage writer who well renowned. But yeah, so like that's where I think it might be a little bit on the nose for its time, where it's like it was directed by a bunch of straight dudes, starring a bunch of straight dudes playing gay. But I would have loved to have seen like a version that really went out with like queer director, all queer cast, except for like the main guy. That would have been a lot of fun. But
yeah, it's again, it's one of those movies where you have to view it in the context of its time. And I think things like that aren't necessarily bad because they started dialogue. They started conversations.
They do. And getting back to Treat Williams is one of the best parts of the movie. It's one of his earliest roles. Great. He plays this private detective who goes undercover into this gay bathhouse. And for the rest of the movie, it's almost like Barry Bostwick in Rocky Horror. He's in various stages of undress most of the movie, whether it's just his tidy whities or like a cop outfit. But he speaks in this high falsetto voice the whole time.
and everybody thinks that he's
really gay.
They think he's gay because of his voice, and he's not.
He's not. He's like, I have a wife at home.
That's one of the more comical parts of that killed me. Every time he talked, I was just like, wow.
It's a choice, but goddamn it, I don't think it's hilarious. So yeah, so that's The Ritz from 1976, and you can find that on YouTube. And I think I have a Warner Archive DVD that wasn't that much money off of Amazon. I'm so excited about this next one, guys. This is 1983's The Return of Captain Invincible, So for my friends over at Vintage Video Podcast, I think they're hitting this later this year. Or maybe it's next year. But anyway, this was a film that I didn't even know existed until you blind bought it at one of the video stores that we go to.
So Antonio and I go to...
We used to have these dates.
Yeah, we'd have like these little dates. He'd pack up his kids and we would go to the mall, as one does, and get some Chinese food and go to our local...
like used video music store.
Used music store. And I was just browsing through things. I think they were having a sale, and I found it, and I was like, "Hey, what's this like?" And it just looked special. And he was like, "No, never heard of it." And
you look into it. So what is it? What this is? It is a superhero musical from 1983. It's directed by Philippe Mora, who he just barely directed before this movie, The Beast Within, which Vintage Video just covered, which is a horror movie with some really interesting practical effects. But anyway, this is the next movie he did. It was all filmed in Australia, even though it tries to pose as New York. It's all Sydney, essentially. Alan Arkin plays, it's like that movie Hancock with Will Smith.
Yeah.
He plays a retired, washed-up superhero who's been banned from doing any superhero activities. So he's gone out into the outback just to live his life as like a drunken...
Yeah, he gets he's investigated during McCarthyism.
Yeah, because his costume is a little too red.
Yes, and he wears his underwear outside. On the outside. And he basically just gets sick of it. He's like, "Hey, fine, screw you guys, I'm gone."
Goes out and lives in the outback.
Yep, lives in the outback.
Christopher Plummer shows up and is essentially like the Lex Luthor of this world, where
and he sings. He sings.
Don't spoil it, bro. Essentially, the whole plot of this Lex Luthor character played by Christopher Plummer is he is trying to ethnically cleanse the world by creating subdivisions and suburbs for people of different ethnicities. And once they all move there, he is going to earthquake them and kill everybody.
So he basically just creates affordable housing in unsafe
That's exactly what his whole plot was.
That's the plot line.
I was like, wow, okay. I want to see a superhero try and tackle that in modern day time. That's the whole thing. Anyway, so because he's doing this, they go and they bring back Captain Invincible.
Yeah, somebody seeks him out and finds him.
He has to go essentially through rehab and learn how to be a superhero again. But did we not mention this is a musical? So there's musical numbers throughout this whole movie. Songs written by Richard O'Brien of Rocky Horror Picture Show and Shock Treatment fame.
So you know they're good.
You know they're good, and they sound like they could come right out of Rocky Horror. Christopher Plummer's song about Have Another Shot. It's this big musical number at the end. Maybe one of my favorite on-screen musical numbers of all time.
What was that line that we liked so much?
If you don't pick your poison, I'll have to bring the boys in.
I just imagine the boys being like parts of the cast from Rocky Horror.
Yeah, maybe, right. Right. No gay undertones there. But anyway,
none.
That's on Tubi right now. And then Mikey has the now collector's edition of the Severin Blu-ray of that, which I've been looking for, and I'm not ready to spend that much money, so you lucked out.
I lucked out, and it came with the soundtrack on CD as well, so you get to jam out to that if you find it.
Good stuff. A good cult movie find that was the return of Captain Invincible. So our friend Brett just covered this not too long ago also on his show, Dissect That Film, and we did it for last year's Animation April, and that's 1985's The Black Cauldron. One of the most controversial animated films of all time, especially because it came out of the Disney wheelhouse.
Yes, it came out at a time when Disney was experimenting with more grown-up themes in movies and more horror themes. Like we know that they did like The Black Hole, and they did Watcher in the Woods, and then they decided to spread that theme into their animated features.
And it was the most expensive animated film of all time. They
the first to incorporate any kind of digital animation.
There was some CG in there. It was 70 millimeter projected, so that was a big deal. And it was based on this series of Lloyd Alexander books, which were really popular, but they weren't as popular as Lord of the Rings. In fact, they wanted to do Lord of the Rings, but they couldn't because Ralph Bakshi had the rights to the animated Lord of the Rings. And so did Rankin Bass. So that's why they chose these. Now, I saw this in the theater and I had like nostalgia goggles for it.
Yeah.
But then you got the Blu-ray, we watched it together and we realized that it just wasn't as exciting as we remember.
Something's off. And I remember as a kid, we had this comic book retelling of it that I used to look at a lot. And I really liked that, but I do remember seeing it as a kid. I think my parents took us to see it in theaters. And I remember my mom not liking it.
Right.
Because it was scary, you know?
It does have. So here's two things that I think are the reason why it failed. Number one, no music. It's not a musical.
No.
Like it was one of the first, it doesn't even have like a song. At least Fox and the Hound had a song through it, even though it wasn't a musical.
Mm-hmm.
This had no musical numbers whatsoever. So people are like, what? No song and dance numbers?
Mm-hmm.
And then two, John Hurt stars as the Horned King, which might be one of the most terrifying animated villains of all time.
Undoubtedly.
The plot deals with necromancy and bringing the dead back to life in zombie form. And the biggest thing about this movie is the mysterious missing footage that Jeffrey Katzenberg himself took out of the film.
Like they didn't even go, okay, what's good for the plot? It got such a negative response in test viewings that they basically just went in and trimmed like how much out of the movie? Like
it was like
30 minutes.
It was like 30 minutes. It was a lot.
And they just kind of did it willy-nilly. Like, is this too scary? Cool. Who cares what it does to the plot?
So like we've seen like concept art of like bodies dissolving and people getting like covered by the slime and turning into these goblin creatures.
Yep.
But I think the most the notorious part about that editing process is they didn't even go back and fix the soundtrack. So there are parts of the movie where it literally cuts mid-song or mid-score into the next scene, and it's just very abrupt because they were in such a rush to get it out. They just chopped it and sent it. Yeah. So that's why even to this day, when it comes to like the filmmaking aspect and the technical aspect of it, it's gorgeous to look at, but it's so just choppy and ill-conceived in its final project. Yeah.
Animation is, I think, some of the best Disney's done, but it's just it doesn't work. And the author of the books watched it and said, it's not the story I was trying to tell.
Nothing to do with the stuff I was.
It's different, but he said, it's an entertaining interpretation of my work, and I respect it.
Also, the thing remember about this one is that it got locked in the vault for so long. Like
it became notorious.
You couldn't get it. You could get like bootleg versions of it, but it wasn't until like I want to say 2010 or 11 that it even got a physical release.
It finally did, and I think that kind of served it well because it kind of created this mythology around it.
It did. And it gave a lot of people like false memories of like, oh, what was that movie? What was so good? And in the day it really wasn't. So
we also, when we watched it, I remember we were like, there's two characters that just don't need to be there. They don't do anything. They don't contribute to the plot. They have powers that make absolutely no sense.
And if you go to Disneyland, you don't see any Black Cauldron merchandise or memorabilia in any of the stores because nobody cares about it. So,
nope.
All right. So this was a fun one that we did. We did the House double feature. Remember that one?
Yes, I do.
We covered House and House 2, which I thought were a lot of fun. The first one directed by Steve Miner, written by Fred Decker, who's known for Night of the Creeps. And this one we thought was funny because like it has so much comparable to The Shining in the sense of like there's an author, a writer who kind of just goes mad as he's inherited this house where his aunt killed herself in.
Mm-hmm.
But then also there's a lot of poltergeist in it too, where there's a portal inside the house that sucks up his young son.
Right. So his son went missing in the house. And we were talking about this, and this all hails back to an episode of The Twilight Zone.
Little Girl Lost.
Little Girl Lost, about a little girl who gets stuck in a alternate dimension, and the parents are trying to find her and just hear her echoing voice, through the house.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this panic of where is our little girl? And it's a really well done episode, but not one that a lot of people really talk about. But then you look at like screenwriters obviously saw the value in it and the potential for a larger story. And that got incorporated into this. That got incorporated into Poltergeist.
Well, Poltergeist is more of a serious film. Poltergeist is a more serious horror film. This movie, I remember us talking about when we were younger, we were afraid of the cover art because it was the disembodied hand ringing the doorbell, and it looked scary.
This was one of those movies that I remember seeing in the video store and thinking, man, this must be the scariest movie ever made. And I remember like talking to friends and going, when I'm 18, I'm going to watch these. I'm going to get these. And it kind of woke me up a little bit, like going, hey, you know, what happened? What happened to that young dreamer?
Right.
Why didn't he watch those movies? So I'm watching them now. I am buying those restored 4Ks from the 35 millimeter prints. And I'm realizing in some cases I was not missing much.
You were not. Well, but House is a different story, though, because it's a comedy, essentially.
It shouldn't have been in horror.
It shouldn't have been in horror. It is essentially, it's got horror elements, but it is a horror comedy. It's got grotesque fat witches. It's got the goblin in the door that pops out. And then it's got Bull from Night Court as like a zombified Vietnam vet that our main character has regrets of letting him die, and he's like haunting him.
And the house isn't a traditional haunted house. It's like it knows what scares you and plays off those fears. And makes them real.
I don't remember the context, but we also had a lot to say about the little boy, the neighbor boy's haircut.
It's honestly, it's an awful haircut. It looks like somebody on set said his hair doesn't work, cut half of it off.
It's like it's like a cousin Oliver with like a mullet in the back. It's terrible.
It's also uneven. It's like one of those things you're like, huh.
Yeah.
Did their first choice bail and they're like, okay, we have to, I don't know.
Well, then we also had a debate because we watched House 2 right after.
Yeah.
And House 2 was my favorite of the two, but it wasn't yours. House 2 is even more ridiculous, where we have a new house, and the main star is Irie Gross, and he has inherited this house, and in the basement is like his great-great-grandfather, who was a archaeologist.
Well, he's buried off
the site,
and they end up bringing him back at somehow
because there's a mysterious Mayan skull.
Yes,
that he and another archaeologist were fighting over back in like the old times, and the skull essentially opens up a portal to another world, many worlds. So we have these worlds that get shoved into this house, and all these different weird creatures and barbarians and stuff show up. The meantime, they're throwing a Halloween party, and he's trying to like hide the fact that his house is a portal to other dimensions.
It's kind of an impromptu Halloween party
by his girlfriend.
Yeah, he has like the kind of classic like
sitcom buddy
who's just like, you're like, in real life nobody would remain friends with this guy.
Right, he's terrible.
He's a horrible human being. It's like, hey, you have this big mansion, I'm going to invite everybody over.
Co-starring Bill Maher is like the smarmy record guy that shows up.
yes. And if you recall, both of these movies have Cheers characters.
Cheers connections. So we forgot to mention that George Wendt is the neighbor in the first movie, House, that helps him catch. At first, we think it's a raccoon, but it's actually a closet goblin.
Easy mistake.
But my favorite is that in House 2, we get Cliff from Cheers.
He plays the electrician who, oddly enough, knows quite a bit about
portals and other dimensions. I've dealt with this before.
You've got a portal problem, buddy.
Yeah. So once we see that character, it's like, oh, so this is essentially like the Christopher Walken character in Click, who's got the mysterious clicker. He's like the Chevy Chase character in Hot Tub Time Machine, who has answers to like the time machine aspect of it.
Just the character that wants
Don
to watch
Knotts
the world burn, that you're like,
Pleasantville.
Okay, why is he doing this?
Yeah. It's that mysterious, all-knowing figure, but in a very personified character. Yeah. In this case, an electrician who has a card that's like electrician/adventurer is like what it says.
So I remember one of the things that was a contrast in this, and the thing that made the first movie more interesting for me was that it's kind of it deals with like Vietnam PTSD in the context of a horror comedy film.
Right.
And it was rated R. And then House 2 was PG-13. And I remember my sister having a sleepover with some of her friends, and they rented House 2, and they could get that because it looked scary.
And it was PG-13.
Had to have a scary movie, and it was PG-13, but I wasn't allowed to watch it. And I remember my sister going, it's not scary. It's not scary. And she was right.
And then one of the cutest creatures of all time, though, the Catter Puppy.
The catter puppy.
So they go into another dimension in there where they come back with this little caterpillar with a puppy face, and it's like the cutest thing.
It should have been like nowadays it would have merchandise. It's like the Baby Yoda of its day.
Absolutely. Now, going back to our double feature episodes, we had a few good ones, and one of the ones we did 2 summers ago was what we called our double feature, where we featured 2 cult films that take place at the beach. The first one being Back to the Beach from 1987, which was the return film for Frankie Avalon and Annette Funicello, as well as many modern day faces that are famous now, infamous now. So essentially, Frankie and Annette, having grown up and put aside their beach partying lifestyle, visit their daughter in Southern California to discover there's still some wild times left in them. Daughter is Lori Loughlin, Aunt Becky from Full House, Harvard, what's a school yachting club?
Yeah. She and she had her own little like she was in some of the.
She had a lot of horror movies.
Amityville. Yeah, she was in Amityville, one of the
She was in the New
films.
Kids. She was in a lot of the horror films of the 1980s. She was in The Wraith, I think. And then she was also in Rad. So yeah, a lot of Lori Loughlin love over here.
Yeah.
But then we also have some guest appearances from like Bob Denver and Pee Wee Herman. Yeah, so great campy movie. The son of Frankie and Annette is I Want My $2 kid from Better Off Dead, who joins like a Mad Max style surfer biker gang on the beach and becomes their king.
yeah. I remember telling you at the time that I'm not so sure that the kid, the $2 kid from Better Off Dead, isn't just the same character.
Right, like it could
that's how I want this to live in my memory.
That there is a connected, joined universe between Better Off Dead and Back to the Beach.
I mean,
100%.
why not?
Why not? Mikey got me the vinyl LP of that because one of my favorite bands of all time, Fishbone, makes an appearance in Back to the Beach, and they sing Jamaican ska with Annette Funicello.
Which, if you are an Annette Funicello fan at all, you know that she did that song. That was one of her big 60s hits.
Absolutely. One of my other friends, it's a podcaster, they just did The Monkey's Uncle, like the Merlin Jones movies.
Oh, yeah.
And she was like the main girl in that, and she sings the song with the Beach Boys. Like, I love Annette Funicello. She's great.
Just so, I don't know. You imagine that, like, I don't know, just wholesome. So nice. So good.
So we'll do a couple more. So the second part of that double beacher was a horror film from 1989 called Nightmare Beach. And that movie is amazing.
Another blind buy for me.
So directed by James Justice, but mostly ghost directed by Umberto Lenzi. So famous Italian horror meister. He directed one of my favorite mutant zombie movies, which is Nightmare City. So that movie is a spring break incident where all these kids come to spring break. It's Daytona Beach. And there is a phantom biker that is going around electrocuting people with his electric chair bike. Now, there's a local biker gang that thinks it is the reincarnated ghost of their gang leader that just got the electric chair.
Yeah, and the movie opens with him being executed. So it really drives that point home.
Right. But there's also some great cameos from John Saxon and my favorite, Michael Parks, who was like the doctor, the pathologist on the case. And there's a conspiracy in town of like who this murderer actually is. It's a lot of fun. It also involves one of the slowest and most hilarious motor scooter versus motorbike chases through a neighborhood I've ever seen, where our main girl is literally escaping like on a little Vespa at 10 miles an hour while the dude on the electric bike is matching her pace as they're just slowly driving through the Daytona Beach neighborhoods.
I mean, you could have, like, I just imagine like there's probably like an outtake somewhere of somebody walking at the same speed.
Right. Like the guy holding the camera can only walk so fast. And that's why.
Yeah, that's it's a real treat as far as movies go. I think isn't this is the one where they have like there's just this subplot with this woman who's a prostitute.
Yeah, there's they have like this 20-minute character development for this lady who's like, you think that she's just a co-ed, but she's actually a prostitute trying to pay for her student loans.
Yeah, and she's like, it just shows her like like with these men that just like, there'll be like this scene and then all of a sudden she's there and you just hear her saying, "Thank you so much for this donation." And then some old guy's like, "Yes, I certainly hope this helps you with your nursing classes."
Your nursing classes.
And just like you keep seeing that coming up over and over. And it's pretty entertaining and pretty funny.
And then she gets electrocuted in an elevator with a raw cable. It's fantastic.
It's kind of like an 80s interpretation almost of that compensating value thing that
it is because we're not going to spoil the plot, but like the killer actually has a reason to punish the wicked. We can say that much.
Yeah.
But the best part about this movie is like it's a slasher movie, but no one really gets slashed. They all get like electrocuted or fried or acid burned.
Yeah, there's the one where like the guy, he turns on the furnace and lets the flames like fly out and melt the face off.
Right. It's a lot of non blade penetrative kills. That's a lot of fun. That's why I like that movie, is the creativity of the kills, of not having to resort to like severing limbs and disemboweling people. A lot of fun.
Different take, but real fun.
Okay, we're coming up to the end, Mikey. So I think we should finish off this conversation with
Dr. X.
That's what I'm going to say. So we did the double feature of Dr. X and Mystery of the Wax Museum.
But I think we can also lump Freaks into this too. I mean, that was a double feature, but Freaks really ties into that.
It does.
And there's a lost episode that we did on Freaks.
Right. So pre-code horror.
Yes.
Two of them being the first Technicolor films.
Yes.
That would be Mystery of the Wax Museum and Dr. X. Both of them referenced in science fiction double feature song in Rocky Horror Picture Show. There's a lot of similar plot elements in Rocky Horror Picture Show, like the brother sister butlers, which is essentially what's her name?
So I'm bad with names on a good day.
I know. Rocky Horror Picture Show, you've got Riff Raff and Magenta.
Yes.
Essentially, the origin of those characters are in those movies. A lot of the science fiction laboratory stuff that Frankenfurter's doing is kind of a throwback to Dr. X.
Synthetic flesh.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And they're real fun. And Warner Archives did and I think they it was a joint partnership with UCLA. They did a phenomenal job of restoring these films and bringing back the 2-strip Technicolor technique that was used in these movies
to restore them.
That would have been what audiences back then saw. And it's really something special. So, I mean, just for the historic, because we were talking about this in the context of other horror movies, these are actually horror movies.
Yes.
Whereas the Universal films, Dracula, all that, those were like suspenseful dramas.
Agreed. And those are available on the Warner Brother Archives Blu-rays as well.
They are a great find,
So that's the majority of the movies that we've talked about in the last 3 years, Mikey. And they were all fun episodes. They all did really well when it came to listens. And, the fact that we can mix it up. We can do like really cool, old school pre-code movies and then do Back to the Beach and Nightmare Beach. One of the episodes that we didn't do, which we tried twice, is we were going to do a horror at the mall double feature.
Yes.
That would have featured Chopping Mall and then Phantom of the Mall, Eric's Revenge. We watched these movies twice.
We did.
And we never got around to recording an episode. So that'll be a 2024 goal, right?
I want to do, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm blinking out on the name. We mentioned it earlier. Night of the Creeps.
Yeah.
I want to do Night of the Creeps. I know that's probably like
Night of the Creeps and Night of the Comet would be a great double feature.
That would be
like the night of
features. Yes.
Awesome. Well, that's pretty much wrapping it up for us, Nick. How did we do on the on the donations?
Let me take a look here. Last one that came in was the one that Parker sent in for alligator chomp chomp. I just want to let you two gentlemen know I'm going to bring myself back in here for just a moment here. I'm going to have to mess with the layout on the stage here and mess with this and mess with this and mess with this. Yeah. You two fine gentlemen, I just want to let you know that during this segment, the live stream for The Cure has officially, in its lifetime, since 2017, as a fledgling little thing that began at Epic Film Guys, has officially raised $100,000
That is
for
incredible.
cancer research. And that is all because of the power of indie podcasters like yourselves, the indie podcasting community, indie podcast listeners, and the supporters and audiences of indie podcasting and all that sorts of stuff. So thank you, gentlemen, first of all, and literally just absolutely everyone. I'm just going to play the audience cheering sound effect that I have on the soundboard. I don't know what to say. I don't have words. I don't know how to process it. It's a stupid amount of money. Okay, that sound effect is too long. It's a stupid amount of money that I don't even know how to quantify mentally right now. But literally, with the donations that came in during your segment, I was just doing the math and everything like that, because that was this year's goal. It's a big goal, and it was always going to be tough to hit it, but. I knew the biggest thing that I really, really wanted to do this year was cross 6 digits. Every single person, every single one of us in this community, every single person that's ever been a part of this in any way, whether they're on the air or anything else, all share a part in that $100,000 total, and the amount of good that is going to do, the amount of lives that could potentially save, legitimately, just thank all of you, everybody. Like, seriously, I don't have words.
Thanks,
I literally don't. So you guys have the absolute distinction of during your segment hitting $100,000 lifetime for the live stream for the cure. Before we run away on the segment here, let the audience know where an encyclopedia. I think I called you a dumpster of film knowledge too. I don't even know.
It was a large receptacle.
It's insane how the amount of film knowledge and things like that you have is crazy. I'm always in awe of it, because as everyone will famously tell you, I've seen nothing. So please tell the audience where they can find all of your wonderful shows and everything about Cultworthy out there on the web.
Awesome. So yeah, go cultworthy.com. That's got links to all the shows I have, including like my little relationship romantic comedy one. But it's got links to Letterboxd. Follow me on Instagram under the Cultworthy Studios. I'm on X, Elon's Twitter, whatever. And then there's a Facebook page. But cultworthy.com is the best place to find me, and then links to all the people I've had on my show. I have a category called Cultworthy Partners. There's a lot of people who've been on Livestream the last 3-4 days that have been on my show, and you can find links to their shows in there. And then please like, subscribe. We're on YouTube now. We've been on YouTube since January, so we're officially a video podcast as well. And then Back to the Balcony being my other show with Justin Henson of the Movie Wire. Find us, watch us, listen to us, rate us, review us, share us. This is always just an amazing opportunity to get on, meet new people, see new people, get donations, but most of all, get you some money for this cause, man.
Yes,
this is the best.
absolutely.
It's like my favorite part of the year.
And yeah, it's been great. And also, I'm going to throw this out here. If you have a movie you want Antonio to consider doing, shoot it his way, because there's so much out there. I mean, we're all kind of dealing in limited pools in a way. So just expand that. Let him know if there's something you want him to do. And I also want to say, I'm glad that we didn't have any mishaps with this stupid thing this year.
Last year I had to hold it for you.
I could hold my own large black mic holder by myself. Thanks.
Right. And thank you for speaking directly into the mic this year.
Gentlemen, again, thank you so much for spending some of your time here on the live stream for the cure, and have an amazing day. Thank you. I appreciate you so much.
All right. See you later, guys.